For my list, I have Cassius, him and his tree, ball and chain around his ankle. We got Megalith as well, his right-hand man. We got a Stalker, which is the monkey stomper. We got Hellboy looking mean over there, the Shadowhorn. We got Little Vinny, Watcher. Then we got, Nuala and her backup dancers, Everything good, awesome. Then we got some Druids. Awesome Druids, gotta love Druids. Then we got some stones. Obviously, you gotta have a keeper. Got a second unit of stones, even better. Alright, then we got a Gallows Grove.
Greetings, this is IronLichW, and this week I decided to run Master Necrotech Mortenebra. I wanted to bring a Mortenebra list that was not in tier, as it seems there's a lot of pressure to run her in tier if you do run her at all. I wanted to take advantage of the mini-feat ability of the Satyxis Blood Witches, where they go incorporeal for a round, and try using that to use them to screen my jacks and then try and charge through them. Normal meta has caught on to this the standard overrun tactic, so I decided to throw this little wrinkle in just to see where it would get me.
Alright, for deployment, I kind of had an idea of what I was doing, kind of centralize everything. Then have the Druids off to the one side so they can, try to fiddle with the zone a little bit, push some stuff out, maybe bring some stuff some closer and everything. My initial idea was thinking that he would probably put the Satyxis with the Druids because they get the +2 defense, but, let's hope and pray that he doesn't.
For deployment of the Cryx army, I decided to put Mortenebra behind the linear obstacle, that way she'd be able to advance and cast spells. The Stalker I put on the far left flank, that way I'd be able to move him up and take advantage of the extended control range. Sometimes people will forget about that, I find. I put the heavy jacks, except for Deathjack, in the middle, that way they get as many different attack vectors as possible based on what my opponent was going to do with his army. And I decided to split up the Satyxis unit with the Blood Witches on the left flank and the Raiders on the right flank. That way they'd both be able to contest their respective zones. And having a base speed of 7 would generally get them in there in case my opponent decided to go for a scenario victory. I put Gorman right next to Mortenebra, as for the time being I figured he'd just do the smoke cloud to help give her that extra defense.
Alright, for advanced deployment, I kind of set the tree behind the wall to try to keep it somewhat protected, to see what I was doing. Then also the Bloodtrackers, I put them on that one side because I wanted to try to do something against the Blood Witches. But later on, as soon as I was done deploying, I remembered that they had incorporeal for a turn, so it was actually a bad idea to put them over there. Which kind of screws me first turn. The shifting stones, I had them on that side, because I figured they could keep the Satyxis at bay with the zone. I could have them shifting in and out, and basically keep the zone contested. Same with the Watcher. The Watcher, with stone form and everything, could be in the zone, and I don't have to worry too much because the Raiders can't hit that hard unless they pop their mini feet.
And Deathjack, although I was going to advance deploy Deathjack, it was going to be in my no deployment zone. I find that when I put him out in front of the rest of the army, I tend to get a little too aggressive with him and get him wrecked early in the game. So I'm going to try and switch it up and see if I can keep him alive a little longer.
Alright, circle first turn. So I think for a second, and then I am running the Watcher up, just so he can test out the water, make sure that the Raiders don't get in and have all the fun first. Then of course, because their prey is over there, and it would make more sense, I end up moving the Bloodtrackers over. So I'm trying to basically make this big huge shift that ends up clogging myself up later on. But let's see how it goes. Then, of course, the Gallows Grove shifts forward, like, hey guys, what's up? Stones shift forward, make sure they have some fun too, but making sure that they're open enough that, they can be available later on. The Stalker cannonballs in and makes sure that the water's good and nice and ready. Then Megalith runs forward, praying that he can, finally cannonball in, but he can't. Not yet. Then Hellboy over here decides to run and try to catch up, but he ends up eating some spicy food beforehand, ends up getting a cramp and falls short. Cassius jumps forward and decides to use Unseen Path to get behind the wall and yell at some people with his stick. And he does 2 for Unseen Path again to get the tree right next to him. Be like, hey, what's up, guy? Then Stones decide to chill with the tree and be like, yay, what's up, buddy? Then Druids just decide to run forward and hope to play in the pool.
So for Cryx turn 1, I first start off by allocating 1 point of focus to the Stalker, the Reaper, the Harrower, but not Deathjack since he creates his own focus. So as I take a few extra seconds to set out my cards and try and plot how I want to react to my opponent's first turn, I decide to start the turn by activating Mortenebra, casting Spectral Steel on Deathjack, and then just advancing her up to the linear obstacle. I continue my turn by activating the Harrower and having him run up the field to try and get in position to where he could do something if need be. And then I decide to run up the Scrap Thrall and the Stalker while I was trying to think out the rest of the turn, but I had trouble deciding where exactly I wanted the Stalker to go, so I just kind of put him in front of the obstacle. I mean, he had stealth, so I wasn't too concerned about him since my opponent would have to focus on some of my other jacks. I then activate the Blood Witches and have them run up the field, but then I'm also trying to be careful because I know my opponent has Hellmouth, and the last thing I want him was to catch the Blood Witch UA, the Blood Hag, in a Hellmouth, and I really wanted to keep her alive so I can charge through the Blood Witches. And then I move on by having the Reaper and Necrotech run. And then Daryl just moved to get in a position to where I might be able to use him next turn. I activated Gorman and had him move up and place a smoke cloud just to give a little extra defense to the Harrower. And then I activate the Raiders and I decide just to run with them. I figure if my opponent is going to have prey on them, I'm going to make them run all the way across the board in order to get over there. And I figure they'll be, defense 16. My opponent definitely won't get the aiming bonus. So hey, if he really wants them, come and get them. Then once they're out of the way, I check where all my living models are, and I move Deathjack, because I don't want to force abomination checks on my own models, because I've failed those before. And then that is the end of Cryx turn 1.
Circle turn 2. Alright, so I'm collecting all my fury as I'm thinking on what I should do. I don't 100% know what I'm doing right now, but I kind of have an idea of what should be happening, so I am moving Little Vinny. He ends up going into stone form, and he also tries to shoot someone. He obviously misses, because she'd be gone, but you'll see in 2 seconds. He ends up missing, not doing anything. A little sad, but, he's not the best shot in the world, and, oh well. Then I am shifting the Gallows Grove up to pray to God that, I can get that Hellmouth off and kill some Blood Witches before they screw me up later on with their, incorporeal. I am moving the Bloodtrackers up so I can, somewhat do something with them. Also trying to be somewhat defensive so they can, protect me if I need them to. Yeah, I am throwing some spears at the Satyxis, and I'm whiffing completely, even with prey and everything. Alright, so now I'm shooting at the Blood Witches. I actually hit like 2 of them, I believe, 3 of them. I ended up killing a few of them, which was actually pretty awesome. I was like, yeah, go, you know, Bloodtrackers, cool. Alright, second spear, go. Alright, let's see if this works. And we hit, and no. Alright, so right now the stones end up shifting forward the tree, because I'm praying that, you know, this turn is a good turn for feet. Megalith ends up trampling forward, you know, trying to stranglehold the Harrower, I believe. Harrower, Leviathan, I always get it mixed up. Praying to God that I can stranglehold it to where it's at least, you know, somewhat stopped in the way. And I am strangleholding it to where it has to forfeit either a movement or an action, which I'm really thankful for, because stranglehold is so ridiculous against heavies. Then the Stalker just moves up, you know, so next turn he can either destroy a Jack or, you know, kill some Blood Witches or possibly just take out an objective. And Hellboy over there just kind of shimmies up beside him as backup. Then Cassius ends up doing Hellmouth. Measuring from the Gallows Grove, obviously it's in range. I end up boosting, praying to God that it hits. It actually hits, thankfully. And everyone gets pulled in, all this deliciousness that is Hellmouth. So now here's a slow one by one, each one gets pulled in, blah blah blah. Then everyone gets hit with a POW 12 that's under the 3-inch AoE. I think I'm just killing like 4 of them, and I end up taking out one of the arms of the Stalker. And then I have a brain fart thinking that I'd actually get, you know, soul tokens, but I'm like, oh wait, no, that's RFP, so it doesn't actually work like that. And if you don't know what RFP means, it's a remove from play. Then I activate, and then I just pop my feet, praying to God that it defends me. Then the Druids basically just run to try to get to the other side, because with their magical attacks, they can actually do something against the incorporeal blood hags. Then the stones just shift forward, kind of putting in a triangle, so next turn I can shift the tree backwards towards Cassius. And that's my turn.
Cryx turn 2. During my opponent's second turn, the critical things that he did were he moved up Wurmwood and popped his feet, creating a huge forest in the middle of the board. Then with Megalith, he also tagged the Harrower with Stranglehold, effectively taking him out of the game for that turn, as he was my only Jack to have Pathfinder. Naturally, it was a little critical. But I continued to upkeep Spectral Steel, and then I allocated 3 focus to Deathjack, as I felt my opponent moved a little too close, giving me a chance to go after Wurmwood and possibly end the game on turn 2. It still took a few minutes to think out what I wanted to do. There were a couple of vectors, and I wasn't sure completely how to get to the tree, with the Harrower being having to sacrifice either his movement or action. I started my turn by activating Mortenebra, casting Terminal Velocity, and popping her feet, just to make sure that I'd get rerolls and hopefully knock out the critical pieces I needed to get out of the way. I really was trying to get rid of the 2 Bloodtrackers and the Shifting Stone that was in front of the tree. So before activating anything important, I went ahead and just activated the Scrap Thaw, tried to charge the Gallows Grove, and fell horribly short because the tree created a forest and I was within that. So he failed his charge, and then the Harrower activated and shot at a Shifting Stone. I was looking at all the targets and everything had stealth, the one thing the Harrower can't ignore with this ghost shot. So I just placed around in the middle and hoped for a good deviation. Under the recalibration feat, I at least get a chance to damage a couple of things. So when I did shoot it, the shot did drift only like an inch to the 2, which was enough to capture 4 large targets, or 4 targets: Shifting Stone, a Bloodtracker, Megalith, and Wurmwood. I killed the Bloodtracker. I couldn't hurt Megalith. Did a point to the Shifting Stone, and I think with that soul I couldn't do a whole lot to the Wurmwood as he was sitting at armor 17 and it was a effective POW 7. At this point, I'm thinking the best target to probably trigger overrun was going to be the Stalker, since the Stalker had Pathfinder, as I discovered when I was looking over the cards. I was originally trying to figure out how to work it out with the Reaper, but I was happy when I saw the little foot symbol on Stalker, so I moved Deryliss over, cast overrun the Stalker, and I activated the Stalker, and moved him up to the closest Bloodtracker. Since his speed is 7, he didn't need the charge, he's able to get there comfortably. And he had 2 swings, so overrun 2 swings, despite having a bad arm, or arm knocked out, he's able to kill a Bloodtracker, and the overrun movement allowed Deathjack to move up his 6. After doing some some measuring with my control range, as well as the laser pointer determined that I did have line of sight to Wurmwood, I activated Deathjack and had him trample in there since I couldn't see him. Because Deathjack's able to have a total of 5 focus on him, I was able to get there with 4 focus, which gave me a reasonable chance at killing Wurmwood. I forced the Bloodtrackers to take a terror check, just because you never know what happens, and if I fail, I didn't want them hurting my Raiders anymore. So the first bot attack on Wurmwood, I was able to do a good amount of damage that forced him to transfer. My opponent only had 1 transfer at this point. So I ended up having to buy all my attacks just to kill Wurmwood. So if my opponent had a second transfer, the game would have gone another round, and possibly in his favor at that point, because it looked like all of his beasts were ready to jump on my remaining jacks and the remaining units. But luckily I was able to take out his caster. So victory for Cryx.